Hello there, my name's Brandon and I make pictures out of tiny squares. And in this video I wanted to talk about health bar design in pixel art games, and try to tease out some of the basic design elements that go into them. Now, when thinking about the representation of health, we tend to see a few common conventions. Probably the most basic is the style that uses a solid bar, which gives this sort of impression of it being a fairly accurate and continuous measure, even though it does often break down into these smaller predetermined units anyway. Next up, we've got the style of health being discrete segments or units. And this may take different expressions, such as being simple blocks or strips, or the classic hearts like in Zelda. This style tends to work really well for communicating exactly how many hits a player can receive, although of course it's not always a one-to-one exchange like that. But in general, this sort of look is also just a nice use of tile-based pixel art. One of the probably less common conventions, especially for platformer games, but still worth mentioning, is health represented just as a number, like the vitality metric from Gunstar Heroes. It's pretty basic, but it gets the job done, and I guess doesn't distract you with additional colors or anything, which means you're probably able to quickly hone in on those weapon types that you have equipped instead. And finally is my favorite, which are the more themed approaches to health bars, like the ornate decoration in the Castlevania one, or the example from Super Star Wars where the life bar is actually just a lightsaber. Now, these two examples could of course just be described as being simple continuous bars like we covered with the first category, but I've split them into their own category altogether because I think it's worth recognizing the extra design effort just to give the health bar kind of a stronger thematic identity like this. For that matter, I'm sure a few of the other designs could easily be in this category as well, like the Mega Man bar certainly has a strong theme to it also. But I'm just trying to pick out, kind of the strong examples here, and I think you get the point. In fact, maybe let me know in the comments if you've got any other favorite or memorable health or HUD design examples from different games. Alright, on top of the aesthetic choices, when we're attempting to construct our own health bar designs, it's also worth considering the actual layout and architecture of this information as well. One of the constraints in 8-bit and 16-bit games is that they tend to be constructed on the basis of tiles. Typically tiles that are 8x8 pixels in size. And all these tiles piece together to create everything from the level design to the arrangement of the HUD. So in this example, we can see that the health bar itself is actually a row of repeated tiles. And every time we're hit, that tile can change to the red one, and the health kind of modulates that way. If you wanted to get even more granular with this, you could imagine a middle step tile that has half the health in it. And then chaining that full series together would allow for smaller increments or smoother animation. But beyond the health, we can see the other elements conforming to this tile grid as well. The portrait, the letters and numbers, and the timer are all allocated their own space on the tile grid. So when you're approaching your own design, you can think about the overall footprint you have to work with, and then consider how the required components might be assigned as these larger visual blocks within that area, which you can kind of experiment and Tetris around and see what works best for your particular requirements. So I'm going to go ahead and design my own health bar as an example. And I'm starting here with a canvas size of 256 by 224 pixels, which is the resolution of the Super Nintendo. And I'm starting here just to imagine that if this were my full game screen, how much space do I think that the health bar should occupy? And likely, hopefully you'd have some other design elements already, like the level and the characters and stuff to help guide that decision. But I think what I'll try to do in this case is select an area that covers exactly half of the screen width, and then I'm going to go down 4 tiles from the top. I'm not really a fan of when things are butted up right against the corner, so just to have a bit of a safe margin, I'm going to clear out 1 layer of tiles from the top and the left side. And that's leaving me with an area of 15 tiles wide by 3 tiles tall for my design, or 120 by 24 pixels. Next, I'm going to block out the basic areas of the design. I want this entire thing to be sort of a scepter design, like I'm thinking something for kind of a cute witch or like a magical girl kind of theme. So what I'm thinking is that there's going to be a large orb on the left side, and that's going to show what type of magic you have equipped. The health bar itself is going to be along the middle as the handle of the scepter. And then on the right side, I'm going to balance it out with just some thematic decoration. This leaves the top and the bottom areas open to fit additional tiling, and that'll probably be for like the score and maybe some power-up icons or something. The first thing I'm going to detail here is the health bar itself. And because it has to fit within the 8 pixel height of the tile, it almost designs itself actually. I used the black line work to section out some walls that represent the scepter handle, and then filled in the rest with a bright yellow for the health, and then just some red to show what it looks like when it's depleted. Around the yellow part of the health, I've used a darker red instead of the black outline, and from a distance, this kind of thing tends to read as a slight glow effect, or it should just give it a bit more of a pop to it. The magic orb at the end is made from a 24 pixel diameter circle, and then I continued shaping and coloring that into place. And I realized that there should be a small bit of housing or connection that joins the orb to the handle, so I've decided to sacrifice one of the health unit tiles to just afford me that space to make that piece. And I improvised some line work to break things up into smaller strips rather than it just being this large block that's joining it. And I think at one point it ends up looking a bit like a light bulb, but one of the important things here is actually this sort of like step shading approach that goes into giving this like a rounded metal appearance. I'm using a technique of stepping through 3 strongly contrasted colors here. And you want to apply this by thinking of the brightest highlight as being the part that protrudes forward the most, and then rounding that off into smaller segments of darker color as it gets further away from the camera. Within the orb, I've created an icon representing the currently equipped projectile. I guess in this case it looks like some sort of Lucky Charm marshmallow, but that one was sized out just to fill that specific middle tile of the orb. At the other end of the scepter, I mentioned how I wanted to do a large piece of decoration that was sort of on theme with whatever this object is supposed to look like. And I'm trying to see if I can fit a rainbow and clouds to create this sort of decorative pommel on that end. I'm really trying to cute it up here, and I thought it'd just provide a nice bit of color and pattern and stuff to balance everything out here. The color palette that I'm using, by the way, is called Resurrect 32, and it was made by fellow pixel artist Carrie Lake, whose palettes I've used before in videos, a few times actually. She makes really nice palettes and great pixel art also. But this palette in particular I thought had such a pleasant look and quite a versatile range too, with there being 32 colors. Yeah, like somehow this is achieving this balance of being soft, but also kind of punchy and vibrant at the same time. I don't really know how it works yet. It feels like color magic to me. So in that way, it was kind of perfect for this theme that I'm doing. And I'll leave a link to the palette down below. At this point, you can see that we've got those major components in place. So I'm doing a final lap of detailing, and again, trying to tuck some additional pops of color into the line work. And then also a bit more decoration just to pad out the overall look of the scepter. All right, the last thing then is to add in some power-up icons and some text for the score. I've decided to use a star motif for the power-ups. And in this case, I don't know if power-ups is the right word. I'm kind of more thinking of them as being like the number of magic charges you might have for those particular spell or whatever. Something like that, I don't know. This is a bit theoretical, just kind of brainstorming at this point, really. And then on the top, I've created some numbers for the score. And these are a 3x5 lettering that then has a dark outline around them. And that tends to be a pretty readable size for an 8x8 tiling. Zooming back out on our full game screen template, we can see what this looks like within that space. And one of the things that I overlooked earlier is that I probably don't actually want this to go all the way to the halfway point of the screen. You know, if we're thinking ahead that maybe there's going to be another similar element on the other side, whatever that might be, I would want a bit of grace distance between those two things. So I'm again going to chop out another full tile from the design, but I think that's all right because there's still plenty of health bar to work with. And it's actually bringing the number of stars here down to 5, which has kind of a nice familiar look to it. So that's looking pretty good, but for the sake of experimenting, why don't we try a couple other quick variations? First of all, I wanted to see what it'd be like if we tried to squeeze in both a meter for the health and a meter for the magic within the handle of the scepter. So I'm moving the walls out to make room for these. And then I figured I should actually reposition the whole thing within the tile grid to account for the fact that it'd probably be ideal to have the health and magic meters placed on different tile rows. To change things up, I'm going to try a look that uses small segments instead of a continuous bar. So I'm drawing in those marks for each of those and then copy paste the tiles along the rest of the handle. Now, another thing I wanted to try with the design was to scale back the decoration on the end cap, I like the original design just fine, but I wanted to see if it'd read any better to have something smaller on that end so maybe it doesn't distract as much from the power orb on the left. So I scaled this back to be just a smaller gemstone kind of thing that matches the color of the orb as well. Bringing this one back into the full view, you can see how that compares. It was worth trying, but I think I still like the original one more. The thin segments are a cool look, but to me, it always reads as a bit sci-fi or digital, so I'm not sure it's exactly the right fit here. So let's take this back to the drawing board and try one more. I'm going to do another segmented design, but this time I'm only going to use this section to show the amount of magic points that you have, and that means we'll have to find somewhere else to put the health. For this, I was thinking of repurposing the orb spot and just putting a heart there, and kind of imagining that this heart could shrink as your health depletes. Or maybe also the glass of the orb starts to shatter as well. That'd be kind of a cool thing. So it's a bit more of an abstract idea, but could potentially be a lot more memorable also. Once again, I'm going to try popping a gemstone on the end. And this time I'm thinking it could serve a purpose by indicating what type of magic is actually equipped at the time. In this case, I guess it's just blue magic. Maybe that's ice though. Yeah, it's an ice stone, not a gem. I don't know. I'm just kind of making this up again. In the end, I brought back the original rainbow motif by representing it as more of a pickup icon. And I was thinking that those could represent, maybe extra lives or something like that. I think this last one is probably my favorite of the bunch. It seems like it might have the most utility, and I'd probably want to see where the design ideas could polish up from here. But I really hope that this all just sort of demonstrates some of the approaches and iterations you can do with the idea of health bars and HUDs in general, and that this could help in designing these sorts of elements in your own work. And so I think that's kind of all I wanted to cover for this. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and take care and keep it square.